President Reagan warned that if we don't fight for liberty, it would be only one generation from extinction. But what if the next generation doesn't want freedom? There's a group of people out there who've even decided that freedom is the new F word. I kid you not. Fortunately, we have Ryan Helfenbein in the Economic War Room from the Standing for Freedom Center at Liberty University. Ryan, welcome back to the Economic War Room.
Hey, it is great to be here, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
Well, every day we have to fight to preserve liberty, and I know that's the fight that you're in, but our viewers want to know, how do I pass liberty to the next generation, and they don't seem to want it?
I think we have to understand first and foremost what the roots of that liberty is. I think fundamentally, in order to pass it on successfully, as Reagan pointed out and as many others have pointed out, I think the roots of that liberty is actually spiritual and inherently moral. It is not just political. We have to understand that what the founders understood about this country, that these were pre-political rights, inalienable, given to us by God, our Creator.
That's so true.
And the pretext of that society was inherently Christian. It was largely Christian. George Barna did a research study here more recently. How many Americans, 330 million roughly, have a Christian or biblical worldview? Biblical worldview, not just a Christian worldview.
Right.
And he said something like 6% polled favorably, where they could answer biblical questions, right, coherently, had an understanding of the scriptures, kind of a basic understanding. That's the context of the current society that we live in.
So it's going to be pretty hard to pass on something to another generation when they don't know where it comes from, they don't know the value that it has, and that's different from the history of, we've got here on the table the Christian history of the Constitution of the United States. So it's tough. Parents want their kids to value freedom of speech and all of the things that are enshrined in our Constitution. But what you're saying is if they don't understand the moral basis for them,
that's right,
they're not going to value them.
That's right. We understand that the Constitution is not a value-neutral document. So baked into that is an inherent understanding of what these rights mean. So when you look at the First Amendment and the right of free assembly, the right of free speech, right, the freedom of the press and so on and so forth, or the Second Amendment, the right to a self-defense, to carry arms in defense of one's property and one's family. Those things are so important, but what they speak to is the values that lie behind them. When you get rid of the fundaments of society, the fundamentals, right, which are on their basis inherently religious and moral, as John Adams said, the Constitution was written for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the governance of any other.
Right.
Yeah. So if you get rid of the fundaments of that, it all caves in.
But when you say that fundaments,
yes,
just for a second, you hear fundamental and you don't think freedom of speech. You don't think liberty. What you think, what the media has told us is the fundamentalists are trying to tell you how to think, tell you what to say, tell you how to act. But that's not biblical.
Yeah, the media is in and of itself a fundamentalist group. They're driven by fundamental beliefs. If you look at all these masking policies and the lockdown, okay, this is the international cabal right now that is operating with certain fundamentals at play. Freedom, though, is God's idea. That's the point of all of this. It is not man's idea, but God's idea. So freedom is first and foremost spiritual. We read in Corinthians, for example, where Paul writes to the church and says, where God is spirit and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom.
Right.
That freedom is first and foremost found in Jesus Christ. If you are a slave living, by the way, there are more slaves today in the world than ever before. There are more people being persecuted than ever before. If you are a slave and under political slavery, economic slavery, you can still have spiritual freedom in Christ. So the roots of that political freedom are first and foremost spiritual.